Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is pretty simple. Take a whole stack of sources and we'll pull out the most important bits for you.
Exactly. The insightful stuff, sometimes the surprising stuff, so you get the picture without having to wade through, everything yourself.
And today we're diving into some material that's got a really interesting mix. We're talking high-level political policy,
Uh-huh.
specific government actions happening on the ground, and believe it or not, some pretty unexpected personal dynamics involving some key players.
Yeah, it's a fascinating set of sources. We've got analysis from a YouTube channel, which itself draws on reports from places like Vanity Fair, CNN, the New York Times.
And even actual event footage from Los Angeles.
Right. So it sets up this contrast, what the stated roles are versus what's reportedly happening.
And then throws in this whole human element that, well, according to these sources, might be tangled up in it all.
Definitely. Okay, so let's try and unpack this stack, see what it tells us about those connections, the policy aims, the real world stuff, and maybe these personal factors.
According to the sources, of course.
Always according to the sources. So where do we start? I think it really kicks off with a specific policy push.
Stephen Miller, right. And his focus on deportations, really ramping them up.
Exactly. The source material points to a Vanity Fair report that lays out this Trump administration goal for mass deportations.
And it wasn't small numbers they were talking about. The source mentioned J.D. Vance forecasting. Yeah. What was it, 1 million a year?
1 million deportations a year this term. That's the stated ambition highlighted in the source. A huge number.
But the reality, according to what the source was analyzing, quite different.
Yeah, very different. The reports cited suggest the administration has been, well, way behind that kind of pace.
Struggling even to keep up with the removal rates from the previous year under the last administration.
That's what the source indicates, yeah. And it even mentions this detail about apparently calling on migrants to self-deport.
Just to boost the numbers, presumably.
Seems like it. It paints a picture of a struggle to meet the target.
And Vanity Fair, cited by the source, had that really specific target from Miller, didn't it? Demanding ICE make, 3,000 arrests?
3,000 arrests a day. No fewer than that. That was the reported demand.
Wow. That's incredibly demanding.
It is. And the source material doesn't mince words about how it was going. It basically characterizes Miller as failing at this.
And the administration overall.
Yeah.
The source used some strong language.
Yeah. Incompetent was one description used in the analysis we looked at. The point being made was that, even if you disagree with a policy, you need some level of effectiveness to implement it. And these reports suggest that was lacking.
Okay, so this reported pressure, this failure to hit these big targets, that seems to lead into the next piece, the real-world actions.
Right. The sources then talk about ICE conducting raids, specifically in Los Angeles.
And the analysis connects those directly back to Miller.
It does. Described as being at the behest of Stephen Miller. And the timing is noted as, well, pretty interesting.
Happening right when Miller was reportedly, railing against Elon Musk.
That's the reported timing mentioned in the source analysis, yeah. Adds a whole other layer we need to get into.
Okay, but first, the LA reaction. What did the sources say happened there?
Well, reports indicate hundreds of protesters gathered downtown. This was late Friday afternoon, condemning the raids that had happened earlier at 3 locations.
And the protests themselves.
Described as mostly peaceful. But then there's the footage.
Ah, right. This is where it gets really disturbing based on the account in the source.
Yeah.
An ICE SUV.
Yeah, the source analysis describes footage allegedly showing an ICE SUV running over a protester.
Someone who was trying to stop an arrest, according to the report.
That's the description. The scene sounds, frankly, chaotic and dangerous. Someone's standing in front of the SUV.
But the SUV moves forward, hits a person, also hits a bicycle.
That's the account provided based on the footage analyzed. And there was also mention of eggs being thrown at the vehicle around that time. Just a really shocking incident described.
And the source material also looked at reactions to this, online reactions.
It did, specifically pointing to what it described as MAGA accounts. Laughing about it?
Laughing.
Yeah. The source quoted one example, something like, LMAO, a left-wing protester, tried to block an ICE SUV and got ran over.
Wow. Okay. And how did the source analyzing this react to that?
Very strongly. Called it cheering on the government running over a U.S. citizen, described the reaction as pathetic and, quote, Not normal.
Emphatically not normal.
Right. The source analyst went on to say they were happy to be on the side defending people who can't defend themselves, felt history supports that, and just kept repeating, this is not normal what is happening. A very strong stance against that online reaction.
Okay, so connecting back.
Yeah.
How does this personal drama angle, the Elon Musk thing, fit in?
Right, so the source analysis circles back to Stephen Miller. According to the reports they cited, Miller was on live TV, specifically Fox News, noted by Aaron Rupar, who the source mentioned.
And he was railing against Musk.
That's the term used, railing against Elon Musk.
And the reason given in the source analysis, why was Miller supposedly so angry?
It's stated very directly. Elon Musk took his wife.
Meaning Katie Miller, Steve Miller's wife, left him to go work for Elon Musk.
That's the explanation provided in the source material.
Yeah.
The source even adds a comment like, potentially tough scenes for Katie being sort of caught in the middle there.
And they offered some kind of proof for this story being real.
Well, the proof cited was Elon Musk unfollowing Stephen Miller online. Make of that what you will.
Okay, so Miller's on TV, reportedly angry about Musk, but talking about budget rules.
Yeah, it's described as kind of wonky. The source analysis breaks it down. Miller was apparently talking about Musk, but without using his name.
Talking about things like reconciliation versus rescissions, mandatory versus discretionary spending.
Exactly. Technical budget stuff, work requirements for Medicaid, food stamps, that kind of thing.
And how did the source interpret that? What was the connection to Musk?
The source focused on a specific phrase Miller reportedly used, Doge cuts.
Doge, as in Dogecoin.
That's the interpretation, linking it to Musk's known association with Dogecoin. The source suggested Miller was sort of implicitly saying, see, Elon might understand that, but he doesn't get these complex budget rules, framing it as a wonky jab.
And Miller's demeanor during this.
The source highlighted him laughing at one point, saying, oh, hell.
So this isn't just like a niche observation. The source material suggests this is being talked about more widely.
Apparently so. The analysis brings in other reporting. CNN, for instance, reportedly saying everyone in the White House is talking about this.
And the New York Times covering these kinds of personal interracial dramas.
Right, that was the phrase used. And the Times report, as cited, even quoted a divorce coach from Miami, Mr. Garcia.
A divorce coach. What did he say?
He was talking generally about how breakups, even, business or platonic ones, maybe like Trump and Musk, have these ripple effects.
How people around them react.
Yeah, how people might want to distance themselves from the drama, feel sort of boxed in, and maybe gravitate towards whoever is doing more of the talking publicly. An interesting perspective on the social dynamics.
And the source analysis drew a parallel to another situation.
It did. To George Conway and Kellyanne Conway and their dynamic with Donald Trump.
Which, as the source noted, reportedly ended in divorce in 2023.
Exactly. So the source compares that to the Stephen Miller-Katie Miller situation, with Katie now working for Musk, and basically predicts a similar outcome for the Millers' marriage.
And what about the Trump-Musk relationship itself in all this?
The sources mention Trump wishing Musk well, Musk saying likewise.
And Musk deleting some controversial tweets. Yeah. About Epstein files and Trump.
Yeah, those specific ones. The source analysis, though, kind of sees this as still simmering. Like they might try to make nice.
But the source was skeptical it would last.
Put it mildly. Offered a pretty blunt assessment of both suggesting a truce wouldn't hold for long.
Okay, so let's try and tie these threads together based on the source analysis. What's the overall picture?
Well, the core argument presented in the analysis is that the administration, already characterized as struggling and maybe incompetent on the policy front,
is now also dealing with this layer of intense personal drama.
Exactly. And the suggestion is that this drama could be a distraction, making them even less effective at actually doing the things they say they want to do.
And the source's final take on that whole dynamic.
Pretty punchy. Basically let them fight. And expressing a hope that both teams lose. Clearly not picking sides, just hoping the whole thing implodes, essentially.
Okay. So, reflecting on all this material for you, the listener, what have we seen? We started with a big policy goal from a key figure.
Stephen Miller, mass deportations. Then we saw the reported struggles, the demanding targets maybe not being met.
Which connects to actions on the ground, like those LA raids, the protests.
And that really disturbing incident caught in the footage analysis.
And then, woven through it all, according to these sources, is this layer of personal drama. Miller, Musk, Katie Miller.
Yeah, stuff that's reportedly being talked about widely, maybe even influencing things.
It's definitely a complex picture. The material paints policy, protest, personal conflicts, all seemingly intertwined.
Okay, so we've done our deep dive. We looked at the sources covering Miller's policy goals, the reported struggles,
The LA raids, the reactions, that awful video incident.
and this whole personal angle involving Miller, Musk, and Katie Miller, which reports suggest is, a real factor being discussed.
We've seen how the source material connects these pieces, the policy push, the reported failures, the real-world stuff like the protests in that video.
Right through to the personal drama that, according to one analysis, might actually be impacting the administration's focus, maybe even its effectiveness.
So here's a final thought, just something to consider based on everything we've unpacked from these sources.
How much do you think these personal dynamics, relationships, rivalries, maybe perceived slights between powerful people, how much do they really affect government policy, its implementation, its effectiveness?
Is it possible these sort of human elements play a bigger role than we usually think, maybe even getting in the way of the stated goals sometimes?
Or is it ever really just about the policy on paper? Are these personal factors always part of the equation somehow? Something to mull over.